Hello, welcome to an introduction to Lean Six Sigma by Blue Crescent Consulting. We're a consulting group based in Salt Lake City, Utah. However, we do work worldwide. This is intended just to be a basic high-level introduction to Lean Six Sigma, just to give you a bit of background about where it came from, what it is, and how it can be used and how it can benefit you. First and foremost, if you're watching this video, you probably have some pain points. Why are you interested? And obviously this is a rhetorical question, but I'd like you to think, what problems do you have that need to be solved? And Six Sigma, a bit of background about this, and I will not read this entire slide, nor will I get deep into the statistical part of it. Six Sigma, basically put, is a methodology to improve processes, plain and simple. It's about making getting the quality levels to near as close to perfection as possible. Obviously, true perfection is impossible, but again, getting your quality levels, and that's quality on something manufactured, it's quality on a service provided, it's quality on any process at all. And again, not going to dive into the statistics parts of it, but this formula is, for those who are statistically and math inclined, that is how Six Sigma is calculated. Quite frankly, you'll never need to see this again should you choose to dive into this Lean Six Sigma course with us or want to know more, but it's always nice just to know where it came from and a little bit of what's behind it. And again, of course, it is a statistical-based and data-driven approach to improving processes, improving methodology, and program project management. And probably not a huge surprise, but Six Sigma was developed at Motorola by Bill Smith, who was a lead engineer there. So yeah, again, not a surprise an engineer would develop something so statistically driven. But they took it, they looked at it as a way to, hey, we're going to put pen to paper, how are we going to improve these processes that we have, improve the service level, improve the quality of the product we're making, all of those things to our customer. And then from there, Motorola developed it initially, but GE took it and really grabbed the ball and ran with it. Jack Welch at General Electric, many of you may be familiar with him. He's written a lot of books on leadership and business, as well as Six Sigma. General Electric is a huge proponent of Six Sigma, and quite frankly, even today, if you go and look at their careers website, it's very common to require that managerial candidates require some sort of Six Sigma certification. Who uses Six Sigma? There are a lot of organizations, big and small. Of course, this slide are a lot of the really large behemoth companies, organizations, some of them government agencies, and then of course a lot of companies around the world use Six Sigma. Let's talk a little bit about Lean. Lean was developed to help identify and eliminate waste and increase value from processes. And again, that's whether it's something in a manufacturing setting or service setting, it doesn't really matter what type of setting. Again, this is something used by large manufacturers, big corporations, military government agencies, as well as mom and pop places, nonprofits. Quite frankly, as you'll see here briefly, you even use a little bit of Lean in your own home. And Lean was developed, primarily was taken, again, taking the ball and run with it, by Taiichi Ono at Toyota. They really took it and ran with it and developed it from there. Again, who uses Lean? Same type of slide, a lot of really large companies use Lean. They're very large proponents of that, as well as small organizations, a lot of mom and pops, nonprofits, big and small as well, and again, individuals. Lean Six Sigma, when we start talking about that, Lean Six Sigma is where we take these two different methodologies for improving processes and really make the best of both worlds. And that's where we're taking and reducing variation and standardizing the processes, and then also simplifying them and improving the flow of that process. Again, it could be a process that's all emails back and forth, something completely electronic. It could be something, a warehouse situation, and of course, everything in between. Really briefly, there are a lot of different roles within the Lean Six Sigma world that are, of course, also echoed in Lean and Six Sigma. There are different levels of belt certifications. There's a white belt certification, which really is a very, very high level. That's usually almost an executive summary. Then there's a yellow belt, where that's where you really dive in and start using some of the tools that are available to you, using that methodology. Then moving on to a green belt, who again learning more of the tools, leading more, and then going into things such as a black belt or even master black belt levels. And those, I joke sometimes, the master black belts are a little like Obi-Wan Kenobi as far as that methodology and really being able to really improve things and make things better. But those are the really higher level folks. As well as a champion, and a champion is not a certified position. A champion, though, I mentioned that here in the roles because it's important for everyone who's working through processes to have a champion. And that champion could be, quite frankly, anyone in the process, and it's very individual, but that's someone who's going to help open doors, break down roadblocks, and basically help you get the job done. I do want to talk about just a couple of tools that are used within Lean Six Sigma, and one of them that stands out most is the Ono circle, and that is named after Taiichi Ono from Toyota, again, the gentleman who really was an engineer as well, who really was a large proponent of Lean and that improving processes. And if you're physically walking through an area, what he would do was, with the Ono circles, he would take an actual piece of chalk back in the day at Toyota, draw a circle on a production floor and plant someone there and say, all right, here you go. Stand here with your clipboard, look around, look for areas of improvement. If they stayed after sometimes half an hour or more, he came back and said, what did you see? What did you notice? If he didn't feel the response was robust enough, quite frankly, sometimes some of those folks ended up staying there much longer. The idea behind that, and this is something you can do for both physical processes and then also virtual processes as well. Virtual processes that may not be as obvious, and virtual processes, again, could be emails going back and forth. It could be, hey, someone who's doing all of their work on a computer. Those are virtual processes, but there's still a process. There's still movement, albeit virtually. It's, again, staying in a spot, whether you're hovering over someone's shoulder at their desk, whether you're reviewing your own processes, or you're in a production floor and looking at that, staying in a safe, comfortable spot to be able to really stop and review. I liken that very much to the difference between a photograph and a video. This is the video version, whereas if you have a photograph of something, you get a very, very finite snapshot in time on what something is. Whereas if you take a video, you get more information, you see more detail. And by doing this and really staying in one spot, again, whether it be a virtual situation or a physical situation, it helps you really be able to see things, and in some cases, spot opportunities for improvement. And many folks ask themselves, do I need Lean Six Sigma? And of course, myself, I am a certified black belt, my obvious response would be yes. However, you already use Lean Six Sigma. I think everyone is familiar with these types of drawers, and ideally your drawer looks more like the one on the right than the one on the left. But even having those little trays where you've got a spot for your silver and everything's in its spot, that is a form of lean and Lean Six Sigma. It's putting everything in its place. It's organization. If you open a drawer and you see that and one particular spot is completely empty, you know, oh, I'm out of spoons, I'm out of forks, I'm out of knives, or whatever the case may be. Whereas if you got that big jumble like the picture on the left, then you may not obviously know that. So again, it's about organization. And here's an example in a manufacturing or warehouse type of situation where, you know, something's crazy and messy. But again, I want to talk about the misconceptions. Is Lean Six Sigma is just for manufacturing? And my obvious answer to that is no, it's not. Service companies use this, financial companies use this. Again, going back and looking at those slides, everyone from the gamut, nonprofits, very successful large and small nonprofits uses. Again, mom and pop places use this. And another misconception quite often is, I need to be a stats genius, right? I need to be able to get out there and do all that math. And of course, the answer to that is no. Again, the amount of tools you use really is up to the individual and what you want to learn and what you need to get out of it, how deep you want to dive. And even if you should choose to dive into the statistics piece of it, there's so many tools and availability and things available for free online. There's absolutely no need to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to need to be a stats expert. I'm going to need to buff up on my math and all of that. And the case on that is an absolute and resounding no. And going into this, one thing we always like to identify with Lean Six Sigma is knowing who your stakeholders are. Of course, you have both internal and external stakeholders. And again, I'm not going to read the entire slide, but that could be many people. It could be clients, shareholders, obviously. It could be government agencies if you're dealing with the regulatory bodies. It could be society as a whole. It could be your suppliers, vendors, things like that, of course. It could be managers, the owners, employees, peers. It could be really almost anyone. And of course, whenever working through anything, a big part of the focus always needs to be is understanding who your stakeholders are and knowing how what you're doing is going to affect them, and understanding what their expectations are of both the process you're working through and you as well. One thing we also talk about when we get into Lean Six Sigma is we talk about an acronym called DMAIC, and that is short for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And of course, part of that is Lean Six Sigma is process mapping, and that is a tool to do, and being able to do a high-level process map. And I will talk a bit about process maps, because being able to understand process maps and write up a really brief process maps, they can be as simple or as complicated as you need them to be, but being able to do that high level in many cases helps having conversations with stakeholders, clarifies a process for you or stakeholders or whomever. They are very invaluable. Again, it can be something very basic, something 101. You can create one in things like Word, Excel. You know, if you have purchase versions, you can of course use Visio, but then there are free ones like I mentioned here, Lucidchart and other things, and quite frankly, you can do process maps with Post-it notes. Something like this is swim. These different lanes are called swim lanes because it does look similar to the lanes in a swimming pool when they've got those competition swimmers, so to speak. And something like this just breaks out a process so you can say, oh, well, sometimes certain things are done by one group and then other things are done by the other, but it's really all the same process. So again, this is just a type of process map showing you how to break it out, giving that, again, 10,000 foot bird's eye level, like as it's called quite frequently, to understand what it is. And again, you can map anything, and this is of course a pretty facetious example. It's pretty busy and complicated. It doesn't need to be this complicated, but I always want to talk about the fact that you really can map anything. And over the years, I've had a lot of folks say, oh, my processes are too complicated and no, we can possibly do that. Well, you really can map anything, and don't let it be daunting. Everything starts with an A3 with Lean Six Sigma, and an A3 is something we provide, just a very basic template and with questions that are prompting questions to help you get started. Asking questions like, who is your customer? Who are your stakeholders? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Very basic, high-level things, as well as, what tools do I think would be good to help me solve any issues or any problems I'm working through? What methodologies do I want to use? So that's what an A3 is, and it's named after, the A3 size paper. Another tool that's used quite often in Lean Six Sigma is 5Y. 5Y is a methodology and tool used for getting down to root cause analysis. So what really happened? I often talk about this and describe this tool as in being able to embrace your inner toddler and being able to ask why over and over and over. An example could be, say we said, oh, we didn't get a particular item sent off to a client right away, and it's very easy just to say, well, so-and-so dropped the ball. Well, digging down and asking why over and over and over, again, while it may sound like someone's being facetious, but it also helps dig into problems that could be, imaginary employee Bob didn't get something ordered. We ask why, the response may be, well, he didn't have time because he'd been pulled away to take care of an emergency project. Well, a follow-up question could be something along the lines of, well, why was the backup not identified? Well, because the manager was out. Well, why didn't the manager assign someone to take care of things in the interim? And again, you can see how it kind of balloons into, you can start to really see other issues, other problems, rather than just good old Bob dropped the ball. Well, Bob probably had a lot of missing pieces and perhaps didn't have all the information that he needed. So that's a method of doing that. CTQ is critical to quality, and again, for those of you listening to this video, a lot of the terms here are very, very common general business or project management 101 terms I like to talk to. And again, critical to quality is just understanding what really is critical to the process, what's really needed, and what's important and critical to your client, to your stakeholders, and everyone else. And then, of course, asking something like that, I always like to ask folks, who is your customer? And working through Lean Six Sigma, it's always important to be able to identify who your customer truly is. Is it someone purchasing or looking for an end product? It could be a peer, it could be a coworker, it could be a manager, it could be a lot of different people. And in some cases, and quite frequently, your customer could be several different people or groups. This page looks very daunting, but a value stream map is another tool that when we talk about our Lean Six Sigma course that we talk about and we get into, and it's a way to really talk about timing and things like that. I talk about it quite frequently as almost, and I'm being slightly facetious here, but almost a souped up process map. It's certainly more than that, but it's really all the different process steps you have with additional detail. who's doing it, how long it's taking them to do, things of that nature. Fishbone diagram right here is a cause and effects diagram, and it's called fishbone because it looks sort of similar to that. And really, this is about being able to bring a brainstorm tool to be able to say, whether it's on your own or with a team of people, saying, okay, well, what was the effect and what are all the potential causes? And there are a lot, you know, if you get out there and Google any of these tools, quite frankly, you can find hundreds and hundreds of examples of them. And I always tell folks, you know, we're never locked into just one specific tool. I always recommend to folks, you find the one that works best for you, or just create your own if you don't see it. We also go into FMEA, which is the failure modes and effects analysis. And that's again where you take on that left side, if you look at the process step input, those different those 3 boxes below, that's where you would fill in your different process steps. And then going to the right, that's where you would fill in the potential failure effects, you know, potential causes of failure, how often it would do, what current controls are in place. And again, it's a way of measuring how serious different steps are and where your potential failures can happen anywhere in a process. Standard operating procedure, or SOP, again, a very common business tool. But that's a great tool that we use very, very frequently in Lean Six Sigma, just to be able to control and understand what we've got going. And in here we've got Kaizen, which means improvement, which is a breakdown of Kaizen, which means, you know, change for the better. It's a Japanese term. Lean Six Sigma, because part of it does come from Lean. Lean does use a lot of Japanese terms, having been developed in Toyota in Japan. However, you don't have to learn a new language to be able to work Lean Six Sigma, but I do like to talk about some of those terms just so you're familiar and it doesn't sound like something completely strange, because it is talked about pretty frequently out there. One of the tools that's used quite often is 5S, which is a methodology for organization. I've written out here the Japanese terms, but there's an English translation as well. In other words, sort what you've got, straighten it, set it in order, shine or sweep sometimes it's called. So organize what you've got, then standardize, and then do something to control or sustain that. So again, it's a tool, a methodology. It can be used both for a physical process. It could also be used for non-physical processes. One thing that's great that's used in large organizations, particularly large organizations with shared drives that tend to get a little messy, is being able to, quote, 5S their shared drive. Go through and basically clean up the garbage. Let's organize what we've got. Manufacturing facilities, office facilities, supplies, things like that, your own home, anything can be 5S'd. And, you know, an example of why that's important is, of course, looking at this jumble of numbers. If I asked you to count 1 through 50, it would take an inordinately large amount of time. However, if I organize them, even though they're all still different fonts, different sizes, you can be able to count the 1 to 50 or even identify if something's actually missing. Here's an example, some examples of different spaces that have been 5S'd, whether it's an office space, manufacturing space. A lot of folks have seen something with like the tools. That's a pretty common thing. You've got that pegboard, whatever that may be. So if something's missing, it's pretty obvious that something's gone. And again, here's that DMAIC that I mentioned earlier, that define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And with our Lean Six Sigma course, we talk about sustainability a lot, because no matter how much you go through and do work through a process, a project, a program, whatever that may be, if you don't have sustainability built into it, quite frankly, quite often things will fizzle and fall apart. So I really tend to harp on that control piece. There are a lot of different types of savings when you're working process improvement. Of course, inherently you're going to be saving time, money, or something along those. So there are hard savings, of course, soft savings, as well as not as common, but top line savings where you're actually generating an income or generating revenue. Those are pretty few and far between, but hard savings is, again, what you've saved. Soft savings is what you could have saved. And again, why do you need Lean Six Sigma? And at Blue Crescent Consulting, we really believe it's a business must. Regardless of the size of the organization, whether you're an organization or business of one or of thousands, you've got processes, big and small, and you want to have them be as efficient as you possibly can. So by doing that, it really is just a business must. It improves cycle times, whether that be working through your supply chain, working through virtual processes, whatever that may be. It also helps you retain your customers and empower your employees by doing so, because they're learning how to be more efficient, they're getting that training, and also you definitely want your customers to know, whatever customer may be for you, that you are a Lean Six Sigma organization, because that speaks volumes. That means you care about accuracy, you care about being the most efficient you possibly can, and that you very, very definitely care about that sustainability piece. We always put this up there because we always like talking about questions, and a big part of Lean Six Sigma, when we teach our courses, one of the first things we always say is question everything, ask lots of questions. How will this happen? Don't be afraid to, when sitting down with this desk, how will this help my business? And let's talk about those expectations you have. And of course, Blue Crescent Consulting, of course, does offer consulting. In Lean Six Sigma, we do just training, and we also do certification in Lean Six Sigma. And we have a very robust training program. We can do in person or virtually through Skype for teams of 1 to class sizes of, we usually cap them at about 30 people, but that's always up for conversation. We also do program and project management training, as well as general marketing training and social media training. So please don't hesitate to contact us. We've got a phone number up there for you, as well as an email to reach out and contact our office should you need any more information, or you'd like to get some information on registering for a course or consulting. Thanks so much.